Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe to the channel for regular content on ancient architecture, as well as all of the latest news from the world of archaeology. Many of you will have seen my video on the latest news from Giza, that the wheels are now in motion for a new mission to finally see inside the Great Pyramid Big Void, which was discovered with muon technology back in 2017. We learned about this new mission from the mission director Zahi Hawass, who recently appeared on the Matt Bell Limitless podcast, Matt being the co-funder of the mission. But the long-awaited mission was not the only news from the Great Pyramid, because at 11 minutes and 22 seconds into the podcast, Hawass elaborates on another new discovery, something that he briefly mentioned on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of weeks prior. For some background, in the relieving chambers above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, there is what is commonly referred to as ancient graffiti. In my opinion, graffiti is really the wrong word, because the red hieratic text is in fact workers' markings scrawled onto the blocks of stone before they were put into position. But saying that, and many of the straight red ochre lines we see in the relieving chambers were of course drawn after the blocks were laid down, because they run across a number of blocks continuously. But the hieratic text was certainly drawn before. That's because they are sometimes upside down, sometimes they're on their side, and they're often truncated by adjacent blocks of stone. And just to note, hieratic is the cursive form of hieroglyphs, a more fluid script that was used for everyday writing. It's like an easier form of hieroglyphs. To not overcomplicate this video, I'll refer to all the ancient writing in the relieving chambers as just hieroglyphs. Many of the hieroglyphs likely had a functional purpose in the building of the pyramid, almost like a label. The markings include the names of various work gangs employed under King Khufu, and hence the name of the king is visible more than a dozen times in the relieving chambers. No, there is not just one Khufu cartouche, there are in fact more than a dozen. Furthermore, there are 3 different variants of Khufu's name on display, and they are used as strong evidence to date the pyramid to the 4th dynasty. But these red markings have been controversial for decades, ever since Zecharia Sitchin, the ancient astronaut theorist, made the accusation that they were in fact forgeries. He said they were created by Howard Weiss, John Perring and his team in the 1830s, the men responsible for their discovery. In truth, Sitchin had to make up this claim because pyramids dated to the 4th dynasty ruined the entire ancient alien hypothesis he put forward in his books. The fact is, they really can't be forgeries, and here's why. As stated, there are 3 variants of Khufu's name inside the relieving chambers. 2 of them appear in cartouches, and they're obvious to see inside the relieving chambers. These are Khufu and Khnum Khufu. These were known about before Weiss went into the pyramid, so I guess technically you could argue they could have been a forgery, even though it is a rather baseless accusation. But what could not have been a forgery is the king's Horus name, and this is Megiddo. It's found in the relieving chambers written in cursive script, and the name is not found inside a cartouche, and this was common for the Horus name in ancient Egypt. In the 1830s, Britain's leading hieroglyphic expert was Samuel Birch, and he and everyone else who had studied hieroglyphs in the world believed a pharaoh's name could only be written inside a cartouche. Khufu's cursive Horus name was unknown. Only long after Howard Weiss and Samuel Birch had died did we discover the Megiddo variant. Therefore, the red ochre markings in the relieving chambers that say Megiddo can't be forgeries. Weiss and Perring did not know the Horus name of Khufu, and they didn't know a name of the king could be written outside of a cartouche. You simply can't forge something you don't know. I made a 1-hour special on the red ochre markings in 2024, and I've linked it below in the description, and I'm now fully convinced they are legit, and they date to the reign of King Khufu in the 4th dynasty. And because the markings were made on the blocks before they were laid, the evidence says the pyramid dates to the reign of Khufu. It really is quite hard to argue with. I personally don't have confidence in any of the evidence put forward to say that these are forgeries, and it's mainly down to the robust counter-arguments and evidence by researcher Martin Stower, and my video on the subject explains it. But could they have been written onto the blocks in some kind of renovation? Again, no. As stated, the hieroglyphs were written onto the blocks before they were laid down. You can see them when you shine a torch into the slightly open gaps, which means they must be original. This part of the pyramid did not come later. There's no evidence for any kind of restoration in the relieving chambers. And also there was no way into 4 of the 5 chambers until the early 19th century. There was no ancient access point or robber's tunnel, and Howard Weiss had to use gunpowder to blast his way through, and it took him weeks to gain access. So, the hieroglyphs are original, and this leads us to the new discovery, which is regarding the red ochre markings in the Great Pyramid relieving chambers. According to Dr. Hawass, a new technology has been used to reveal previously unseen markings in the relieving chambers. The hieroglyphs were found in chambers 3 and 4, namely Nelson's chamber and Lady Arbuthnot's chamber. We find a mention of year 13 of Khufu's reign, and experts also discovered the names of 3 more work gangs connected to the goddess Wadjet. The hieroglyphs for the good god were also found, and apparently there are also more cartouches. Furthermore, the new technology is able to reveal 2 distinct layers of hieroglyphs, meaning that some had either faded or were rubbed out, and new ones were written over the top. Right now, this new discovery is unpublished, and Hawass only showed a few images on the Matt Bell podcast. This is the west wall of Lady Arbuthnot's chamber. When I first saw this image, I straight away compared it to the detailed sketches created by John Perring in the 19th century, putting them side by side. On this one wall, these hieroglyphs are the ones unrecorded by Perring, which includes some of the glyphs in the Khufu cartouche. And to me, this kind of proves the hoax theory to be wrong as well. Weiss himself also does not record the missing symbols. If Weiss and Perring were trying to pull off a major hoax, they would have made it crystal clear that this was a Khufu cartouche. They only recorded a few of the symbols inside the cartouche. They don't even read as Khufu. Only using the very latest technology have we now seen the rest of the hieroglyphs, and only now in 2025 can we read it correctly. And this clearly means they were not visible to Weiss and Perring, else they would have recorded them. Weiss and Perring and their team wouldn't forge cartouches and then record them incorrectly, because their record is the only proof they had. The hoax hypothesis simply doesn't make any sense. Hawass also shows a real photograph of the Western Wall, how it looks today with the naked eye, and he also shows the scan results. And, as you can see, it really is amazing what technology can do. He next shows the west wall of Nelson's chamber, and here labelled 1 looks to record a date. On Perring's diagrams he just records a smudgy mess, as does Howard Weiss. The hieroglyphs labelled 2 are also a new discovery, unrecorded by Perring and Weiss, and it includes the name of a work gang related to the goddess Wadjet. The diagrams also show some errors in Weiss's and Perring's recordings, which is very strange if this is a hoax. But it's not a hoax, and the errors are fair enough because Weiss, Perring and their team were recording the hieroglyphs by candlelight. The diagram also shows a few more glyphs that were missed by Perring and Weiss. The new hieroglyphs that have been discovered had likely just become faded over time. We all know the problem with humidity inside the Great Pyramid, so such a thing is to be expected. The new pictures shown by Hawass also clear up a question posted on online message boards in 2024, which is, why are this group of markings from Nelson's chamber different from those recorded by Howard Weiss? Weiss recorded this line, as did his colleague Mr. Hill, but Perring did not, and it's also not on modern photography. And there was discussion of a conspiracy, that Weiss and Hill were not recording what they saw on the walls of the relieving chambers. Well, now we have the answer. The line is there, and it was always there, but it was clearly just faded. It was probably very faint in the 1830s, and that's why Perring missed it. Weiss and Hill correctly recorded the line. There was no treachery in their work, and the new pictures also explain why it's faded, because the line belongs to the older layer of hieroglyphs, the ones that were mainly rubbed out and painted over. What really is amazing though is that we now have more writing to analyse. And thanks to modern technology, we also know there are two layers, and we're also able to separate them. Of course, Perring was unable to do so, and that's why some of the hieroglyphs on his diagrams do look like jargon. The old and new hieroglyphs sort of merged into one. But why are there two layers of markings anyway? Well, of course we don't know. I guess the first ones could have been made by the gangs transporting the blocks, then they were rubbed out, and new markings were made over the top by the gangs laying them into position. That's one possible idea anyway. Whatever the reason, I don't think it's too important, and that's because of the nature of the markings. When they were written, they didn't hold any great significance. They're written on blocks inside sealed chambers, and they were never meant to be seen again. They were just scrawled by workers during the construction of the pyramid. Maybe some markings were functional, and acted like labels for the stone, but maybe some mark the gang's names and dates as a kind of memorial. We see modern graffiti where people write their name and the date, so maybe the workers were doing the exact same thing. Either way, I have no doubt the markings are legit, and it's amazing that experts have used the latest technology to discover unseen hieroglyphs inside the Great Pyramid. And, when studied, they will hopefully tell us a bit more about the pyramid builders. The year 13 of Khufu's reign is certainly an exciting find. Of course, with only a couple of sentences from Zahi Hawass on a podcast, as well as a couple of pictures without any great detail, at this stage I can only report so much, but I'll be looking out for a more detailed paper on this discovery in the future, and I'll be sure to report it here on the Ancient Architects channel. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.